Hello, today I'll be analyzing and talking about the Monopoly chapter in John Green's The Anthropocene Reviewed. The past is a good way to introduce Green's purpose for writing this chapter in the book. The purpose of writing this was to share the true origin of the board game Monopoly, as it's not common knowledge to know the problems around its history and upbringing. In order to do this, Green provides background information on how to play the game, as well as providing his personal criticism and viewpoints on the game. The audience isn't aimed at a specific target, but rather general readers. However, it is heavily aimed at the company Hasbro's, as Green aims to call out their hypocrisy and wrongdoings when crediting the creator of Monopoly. The speaker and narrator voice of the book in this chapter is John Green himself, being the author. The situation that has led Green to creating this chapter is a controversy of Hasbro refusing to acknowledge the true creator of Monopoly. This ironically creates truth to the game's purpose, capitalism drawing out the poor and simultaneously making the rich richer. Green's main argument of the Monopoly chapter in his book is how the game shares a message of power getting unjustly distributed, yet the game's company did the exact same thing and stole power and knowledge from its two creators. Charles Darrow is credited with being the inventor of Monopoly. However, Elizabeth Magie, primarily along with numerous helpers, shaped the landlord's game. Charles Darrow directly replicated the landlord's games into Monopoly and profited along with Hasbro. This shows how individuals profit through seizing an idea from others. This corresponds with Monopoly in the sense that one gains all in the end while others suffer, such as Elizabeth Magie in this case. Green argues how immoral and factually incorrect it is for Hasbro to acknowledge Darrow while refusing to recognize Magie's role in creating Monopoly. These motives around the unjust credibility and incorrect information around Monopoly drove Green to create this chapter. The elements I've identified throughout this chapter are historical allusions, juxtaposition, anaphoras, connotation, and a use of pathos throughout. I organized my information through the most relevant and important devices throughout the whole chapter rather than analyzing them by sections. So first off are historical allusions, which are references within a piece of writing about previous people or events that carry significance within them. Green builds up to his main message by using historical allusions, allowing his audience to understand the background and timeline of Monopoly. In creating the context for the origins of Monopoly, Green shows his audience a new perspective of the game and Hasbro while still being informational. Knowing the historic foundation of Monopoly allows the readers to understand why he feels so negatively about the game and felt the need to write about this in his book. He uses allusions throughout paragraphs 8, 10, and 11, the strongest in these quotes. Almost 30 years earlier, a woman named Elizabeth Magie created a board game called the Landlord's Game. Magie also felt the need that no feminist movement could succeed without larger changes in the economic system. Magie designed the Landlord's Game to illustrate George's ideas and believed that as children played it, they would clearly see the gross injustice of our present land system. Next is a use of juxtaposition, which means placing things and ideas side by side for the purpose of comparison and contrasting effects on the text. Green uses juxtaposition to highlight the similarities between Monopoly and real life, as well as the two different games. The Landlord's Games and Monopoly aim to showcase the real-life economic struggles, in which all were rewarded with causing opponents debt, gaining all the money, and owning rent systems that are designed to enrich the landlords and the rich further. He creates this throughout paragraphs 3, 4, 5, and 11, continuously throughout the chapter to showcase the ironic similarities being the strongest in these quotes. Like Monopoly, it had a square board with properties, and like Monopoly, if you made a bad roll, you could go to jail. Like life, Monopoly unfolds very slowly at first and then becomes distressing fast at the end. Like life, people find meaning in its outcomes even though the game is rigged towards the rich and privileged, and insofar as it isn't rigged, it's random. Anaphoras are also found throughout the chapter. Anaphoras are repetitions of a word, phrase, or clause at the beginning of two or more sentences or clauses in a row. Green utilizes continuous anaphoras and repetition throughout the chapters for the purpose of emphasizing and creating importance to his words as well as comparing ideas. The repetition of these words delivers an appealing effect to the audience as it compares the Landlord's Games to Monopoly, as well as how the game's purpose connects to life's purposes in terms of money, capitalism, and relations with others. The repetition is found throughout paragraphs 3, 4, 5, and 11, which are like life and like Monopoly. The phrase like life has the purpose of comparing Monopoly to a real-life situation in terms of pace, outcomes, and relations with others. In-game and in real life unfold slowly, then pick up the pace as the game continues, creating bankruptcy, properties, and competition. This also ends up in damaged relations with others as you may take money from friends and use other people to get ahead. Finally, in the end, one rich winner ends up getting richer, while the others suffer in bankruptcy. These ideas are all similar and occur in real life and Monopoly. The phrase "like Monopoly" has the purpose of comparing Monopoly to the landlord's game, to show how much Charles Darrow stole from creators like Elizabeth Magie. Both games have a square board with properties and with the same rules and outcomes. However, Maggie's version had two sets of rules to see different economic outcomes. And finally, there are also connotations, which is a non-literal, indirect, suggestive meaning of the word where emotions, attitudes, and ideas are implied. Green utilizes negative sarcasm, irony, and humorous tones in his narrative while explaining the game Monopoly. As an author, Green mixes sarcasm and humor to get his point across. In doing so, it effectively reaches his audience understanding as the information is easier showcased in an entertaining way. However, his humor has negative undertones as it addresses the problems wrong with Monopoly while using sarcastic comedy to do so. He establishes primarily in the paragraphs 1, 14, and 15 with these quotes such as, "After many hours you finally win the game. You've turned all the universe's resources into paperclips. You did it. Congratulations. Everyone is dead." So many people got robbed by Darrow's monopolism. A story of capitalism working turns out to be a story of capitalism failing. Green ties in pathos throughout his chapter to appeal to the negativity of monopoly, aiming to convince the audience the same way. He does this through irony, sympathies, and imagery to pull his audience in. Green has a very particular way of using emotive language to connect to his audience and draw connections. The sentences that stand out the most to do so are the ones shown. And though no matter how rich you are, there is an ever-expanding void inside of you that money can never fill. And so many people got robbed by Darrow's monopolism, but Elizabeth Maggie's loss is especially galling. In this book, Green gave this chapter and topic particularly 1.5 stars. However, personally, I would have given this chapter a 1 star. I had the same views as Green throughout his argument and maybe even a stronger disliking, which accounts for my 1-star rating. Despite the game being fun to play with friends, its upbringing and history ruins the experience for me. So, with this concludes my presentation. Thank you.